Okay, I can hear now.
Call this session of Board of Revision to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty One territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation Treaty 3 territory. With me today is Lynn McFadden, who's right to my right, and attending by Zoom is Cynthia Stevens. My name is Harvey Diamond. The City Assessment Department is being represented by Rodney Pontanella, and our Administrative Assistant is Jaswinter Kumar. To Mr. DuPont, who's listed as Zoom, you please note that you are placed in the waiting room until your properties are called upon. When it's your turn, you will be admitted to the meeting room. Please follow along with the Cities of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you into the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You'll then be permitted to speak with respect to your properties. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters is sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration, and makes its decision based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issues a written order that would be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence upon application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and render its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing those items 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Mr. Kumar, you can actually, I guess now, affirm the assessor and the first applicant. Yes, Mr. Thank you.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Rodrigo Pontanella.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the first property we're dealing with is 5 Sergeant Avenue. And Mr. Penanella, when you're ready, you can start that matter.
Okay, just give me 1 second here. All right. So the file number is 22-3680. The property under review, or sorry, the roll number is 1305-153-4300. The address is 505 Sargent Avenue. The 2023 assessment went out at $845,000. And I do have a request for the a non-cooperation to be placed on this file.
Okay, you can go over your evidence in that regard and why we should consider that.
Okay, so for the evidence, we don't have the, so if we turn to page, okay, so I actually have a recommendation on this property as well. Should I go through my recommendation, or would you like me to go through the non-compliance first?
I think we go through the non-compliance first, and we'll determine, because the recommendation is, you know,
Yeah,
I guess I have a question. If in fact you make a recommendation and we agree to non-compliance, so the recommendation would only commence a year from now, correct?
Sure. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so if we turn to page 12 of my brief, I'll give you guys a second to get there.
Take a second to get there, yes.
I have included some of the documents that we have on file in regards to the non-cooperation. So you can see that we do have what appears to be a document that was delivered, and yet we haven't received anything back. And then from there, I have the standard income and expense mailer that I had included that would have been included in the mailing of the mailer to the subject.
Correct, okay. So you don't have a filled out one because you didn't get one back here in the beginning.
No, we don't have a filled out one. All we have is that Canada Post tracking showing that it appears that the mailer was signed for, but we never received anything back.
Okay, you're fading in and out. Maybe if you can stay close to your microphone, it would be helpful. But we are hearing you, but sometimes it does get sort of faded.
Is that a little better?
That's good now. Mr. Smith, what's your position on that?
I'm afraid I have no further detail to add to that.
Okay, well, it's still something that we have to consider, and when we do so, we're going to do so without parties present. So I'm going to just leave the room for a minute. Yep. Okay, so we have made a decision, and I think it's pretty clear. I think nobody's surprised that we didn't grant this application. If we didn't grant any, as there was no defense to it. So on that basis, we've accepted the non-compliance, and so the orders does shift to you, Mr. Smith, and you can proceed first.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the property we're dealing with first here is 505 Sargent Avenue. Is everybody able to hear me? I should check to start with.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So 505 Sargent Avenue. Let's look at the location of the property to start with. I'll get you to flip quickly to my page number 8. This gives you a map of where the property is located. So it's just to the west of downtown on Sargent Avenue. It's located on Sargent on the north side, just west of Spence Street. So in that stretch of Sargent, just west of downtown. We can move back to cover page, gives you a good image of the exterior of the property from the street front. So we have 2 main floor units that comprising the retail section of the property. One is a owner occupied restaurant. The owner of Viva is also the owner of the property that we're dealing with here today. And then on the other side is a pharmacy tenancy. The upper floor is office space, and we'll get into that as we go through the brief. We can flip forward to, I guess, my first page there. Obviously, our value that we have arrived at for 2023, we have a market value of $642,000. This compares to the 2020 assessment as indicated on page number 1. The property was reduced at that time from $729,000 to $591,000. This decision was based on my valuation of the property. I've included that material at the very end of my brief. I think it's the last couple of pages. You can have a look at that if you wish. So from $591,000, the 2023 assessment is now $845,000. That's a 43% increase over the 2020 assessment. Again, this is not an increase that we see as typical in the marketplace. Certainly, there was no huge jump over the COVID period in valuation of retail. So that would be well beyond the typical increase that we would see in the market. And there's nothing indicating that this particular property has vastly improved to that level that would support the value of that number. Again, page number 1 Just gives you a bit of background on the property. It was originally built in 1991. We have a C2 zoning. The site area for the property is 5,612 square feet. And given that we have 2 floors, we have a total leasable area of 5,700 square feet. Let's quickly zip through the condition of the property. So 2-story commercial building, 2 main floor retail units, 2nd floor office. I would describe the restaurant. The restaurant has had some upgrades to flooring and some of the finishes. That is the, again, owner occupied unit. The other unit being the pharmacy tenancy. Has considerably older flooring, ceiling tile, and other finishing, which we'll get to in the photos. 2nd floor office units accessed via central open stairwell. The finishes upstairs are quite a bit older, older flooring and other finishes, as we'll see. There's also been issues with water penetration through the roof, and there's always ongoing issues with that and maintenance that's required by the property owner. So let's flip quickly to the photos. Page number 2, another exterior, one of the rear. There's a limited on-site parking. Page 3, we have the interior of the restaurant. At the top of page 3, as well as the central stairwell to access the 2nd floor office space. Top of page 4 and the bottom of page 4. This is the main floor pharmacy tenancy. So you can see the older nature of the flooring. The carpet is quite worn. Ceiling tiles are damaged in certain areas. It's a tired space. It is what it is. Then we move on to the 2nd floor, page number 5 at the bottom. We have one of the interior spaces upstairs. Top of page 5 gives you an indication of the ceiling tile, the water penetration issues. Then we have photos of some of the other space upstairs. So again, 2nd floor office space on Sargent in a lower quality condition. Site description, we've just got an aerial of it on page 7. You can see that, again, there's very limited on-site parking. So that is the property we're dealing with. Let's move into the valuation. We can flip forward to page number 11. And in the middle of the page, subject property leases, we have information from the owner from their 2017 income and expense questionnaire, which was submitted. At that time, the property produced a gross income of $77,177. Tenants paying their own hydro and water utilities, everything else being included in the gross rent, deducting the operating expenses and a reduced management fee gives us an NOI at that time of just under $36,000 with no deductions for vacancy, expense allowance, or shortfall. So that is the property going back in time. That compares to the just under 53,000 in NOI that we arrive at for our valuation today. So that's what the property was producing. Really, nothing has changed since that time frame. So let's look at pardon me. Let's look at the market and see what appropriate net rental rates would be for both the retail and for the office. I've broken this down. As you can see, we have a retail chart and then we have an office chart. So none of these will be exactly perfect comps, but we're trying to provide the best information to help frame fair market rental rates for the property. So let's start on page number 11 with the retail. I would ask you to ignore the first rental comparable on 960 Pembina. That is an automotive comp that should not have been included in this chart. So moving on to the 2 and 3, 1501 Gateway. This is a good strip center located on Gateway in East Kildonan, just north of the Chief Peguis Bridge, built in 79. 2 leases in 2018 for retail space at 1275 and 1350. So this would be a strip center that's a little off center as far as being where it's located. So it would tend to drive somewhat lower rental rates, somewhat similar to the subject in that regard. 1875 Pembina, strip center located just north of Bishop Grandin on the west side of Pembina. 2 leases in 2018. Of 1325 and 1250. Again, it's not a bad strip, certainly better located than Gateway, but it is a bit further back from the roadway, etc. So it does also drive a bit lower rents. 823 Gateway, strip just east of Gateway. 823 McLeod. This is anchored by Dollarama and has some other tenancies. Again, not on the main roadway. You can see the rent level there in 2019, $12.15. Newer property in 1994. I won't go through each and every one here, but you can see that as we go down, we have some well-located properties on Provencher. One downtown on Gary Street across from Hotel Fort Garry, St. Anne's, and we're looking at rents in that 1175, 1215 type of range. Happy to review those further if anybody has any questions on them. Page number 12 has one additional comp. This is well located in St. Patel. It's an older strip center, $12 gross rent. Net rent of $4.80 once operating expenses are deducted. So that's what we're looking at for retail, in and around that $12 range for not optimal retail properties. Let's move on to the office section on page 12. So again, we have second floor office. It's not retail. So we've tried to find rents that would be appropriate. 167 Lombard is our first one. This is the grain exchange building. Obviously not necessarily the same, but it has some issues that make the rents there typically a bit lower. So we're looking at a $9 rent in 2021 lease there. 379 Broadway, close to the legislature building. $11 rent for 3,000 square feet in 2021. Significantly better space, more typical office space. 428 Portage. This is the Power building immediately next to the Hudson Bay building. $10.38 a square foot in 2018. Older building, but very well maintained and managed and owned with elevator access, etc. 1038 there. I don't intend to go through all of these, but what we're looking at, all of these buildings would be considered superior to the subject property, and the rent levels that they're achieving are in that $9, $10, $11 square foot range. So we have the Crocus building being 211 Bannatyne, Credit Union Central at 317 Donald, built in 2005. That's just north of the Mountain Equipment Co-op building. Again, rent levels in that $850 to $11 a square foot range is typically what we're looking at. We then have the stats on office space in the market. Cushman stating Class C buildings would be at $11.68 a square foot. Subject property is not a Class C building. It's one of those commercial buildings that has second floor office space that is typically very challenging to rent. Certainly drives lower rental rates, the location of it, the lack of parking, etc., you're going to get lower rental rates for space such as this, particularly in the condition that we're seeing. So all that being said, we've assigned market rental rates of $12 a square foot to the two main floor units. Keep in mind that the pharmacy is significantly lower in terms of the quality of the finishes. And then we've assigned $9 a square foot to the second floor spaces. And this gives us our gross rent of $63,300. Let's move forward. Vacancy in the expenses, page number 14. We have the Johnson report information regarding strip center vacancy. They don't really cover vacancy specific to a property such as this. We've deferred to the city's 6% in our retail valuation. Typically, there is vacancy on the second floor in this building. You can see that we're in line with the valuation. Everybody has heard my information with regard to the expense allowance. Suffice it to say, I'll keep it very brief. In past assessment cycles, up to the 2020 assessment cycle, City of Winnipeg had an overall expense allowance of 7%. This was comprised of two different components, a 5% management expense, it was termed, as well as a 2% other, which was to account for structural. This has since been compressed to an overall 3% expense allowance. I run through the background with regard to the need to include these expenses that are non-recoverable in developing an NOI with the support of the Appraisal Institute of Canada documentation in the middle of page 14, how to develop the net operating income. We then outline the components or the line items that would fall into that non-recoverable component, professional fees, etc. You can run through those if you wish. And then previously in the last cycle, I conducted a study of appropriate properties to determine what the non-recoverable expenses would be on a 3-year basis. So we ran through a study between 2016 and 2018, reviewed between 45 and 53 properties, and we determined in two classifications a 3-year average of 11.5% and 12.7% for non-recoverable expenses. We're simply asking that the non-recoverable allowance be reinstituted to its former level of 7% overall. That being well supported by both our documentation as well as numerous other agents in the Winnipeg community. So that's the background. Shortfall, we're in agreement with $7 a square foot, and we can move forward to the capitalization rate. So we have two components of a property. However, the important bit of this property is obviously the main floor with the retail tenancies. They would frankly struggle to get $9 net as a rent on the second floor here. So they're not buying two separate components of the building, they're buying the property as a whole, and it's would be considered a retail property in that regard. So looking at page 16, we have the typical commercial brokerage market participants, national brokers here at Cushman & Wakefield and CB Richard Ellis. They're stating a cap rate range of 6.5% to 7.25% for non-anchored retail strip malls of investment grade quality. Obviously, this is not a strip mall. It's a standalone, certainly not anchored, and it would not be an investment grade retail asset. So the range that they have is 6.5 to 7.25, and that's the narrow band for kind of that peak investment grade retail asset. So beyond that, we look at the market. We've provided our own background with regard to cap rate study. Please ignore the second comparable there, number 2. First comparable is 1411 Henderson. This is a strip mall on Henderson Highway, located just south of Chief Peguis, just south of the Safeway anchored retail node there. So it is in a strong retail location. 2021 sale at a cap rate of 8.9%. So we have tenants such as Quiznos, Dollarama, Fabutan, Century 21, etc. It's a strong retail mall trading at an 8.9% cap in 2021 during the COVID timeframe. Second comp, number 3 there, as it shows, 130 Osborne, 435 Stradbrook. This is located right at the corner of Stradbrook and Osborne. Again, good location, has on-site parking. 2018 sale, trading at a cap rate of 7.5%. Finally, we have the last comparable, 1800 Corridon, trading in 2019. This property was built in 2012, so it's a very new retail strip, well located in River Heights, just to the just to the east of Kenaston, and on the way to the Tuxedo area. So this particular property, well tenanted with strong boutique shops, and that traded at a 7% cap in 2019. These are all based on the actual income and expense the property was producing. So that's the background. Where would our property fit within that? We have a range here of 7%, 7.5%, 8.9%. For the 3 comps that we show, 6.5 to 7.25 for better quality assets, as quoted by the market. Brokerage participants, we have property located on Sargent in the West End, just west of downtown, with aging finishes, etc. We believe that a cap rate of 8.25% for the subject property would be reflective of its true market value. So if you look at page number 16 at the bottom, the summary of our valuation is presented on the left side of the page, followed by City of Winnipeg 2023 and then City of Winnipeg 2020 valuation. So running through our valuation, you can see that we come to a final market value of $642,000. On the other 2 columns, you have the 2 City of Winnipeg valuations, and you can see the drop in cap rate from 8.5% in 2020 from the City of Winnipeg to a cap rate of 7.35%. This being in the time frame of COVID, we certainly don't see that happening in the marketplace. If you flip to the addenda, I've included material that the property owner has recently sent in to the City of Winnipeg, and some background with regard to capitalization rates. And at the back, starting on page A8, we have a news article quoting Wayne Johnson, local expert in commercial real estate, produces the Johnson Report, which we're all aware of. And if you flip to page A10, he gives you some background on the impacts of the pandemic and the regulations, et cetera, surrounding that on the retail market in Winnipeg. Suffice it to say, it has been hit hard. Lots of vacancies, lots of deferred rent, lots of bankruptcies, et cetera. So the value of retail property in the city certainly has not been helped in this time frame. And our valuation date, of course, is April 1, 2021, right in the heart of COVID. the very back, we can see the decision from the last cycle based on my valuation, which is included there. That is my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Pinella, if you have any questions, Mr. Smith, you can ask them now.
Yeah, my only question for Mr. Smith would be the discrepancy that we had in our overall leasable area. So on record, we used 5,700 square feet for our leasable area, but I believe the brief shows a total area of 6,100 square feet. So I'd just like to know where the difference would come in that, as you know, the higher the square footage, the lower the rental rate will be as an overall picture.
So I'm sorry, I think we both have the leasable area of 5,700. Can you point me to that page that we're looking at there?
Page 13 of your brief.
13.
And you have a breakdown of all the units, and then you come up to a total area of 6,100 square feet and a total overall price per square foot of $10.38.
Well, it is actually based on, that must be a typo, I'm afraid. I think we're looking at 6,100. Yeah, I'm sorry. Those are the rentable areas according to the information of the broker, or not the broker, sorry, the owner. If we look at page number A1, they're indicating 6,000 square feet, but if you look at page A3 and we go through the actual leasable areas, it came out to 6,100 square feet. Now, that is slightly higher than the amount that the city has in your valuation, I guess, in terms of square footage, but that is what tenants would be charged on at this time.
Okay.
To that end, I guess I would say the owners of the property are they're not brand new Canadians. They've certainly been here for a while, but English is not their first language, so they struggle a bit in that regard. And it's slightly more ad hoc in terms of whether it's BOMA standard or not, things of that nature, I guess we would say, if that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's your only question? Okay. Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions of Mr. Smith?
Just a clarification on page 11 of your brief. You were referring to the 2017 income and expense questionnaire and the 2020. And then I think you said, but I'm just clarifying, that nothing has changed in terms of the operation of the property since then, since we don't have a questionnaire for this year?
Yes, essentially it is the same as it was then. Certainly there haven't been any upgrades to it, and the two main floor tenancies are certainly the same too, being the owner and the pharmacy. I'm not, the one tenant on the second floor is the same. I'm not sure if the other one is the same or not, but generally the same, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
I have no further questions.
And I don't either. So, Mr. Pernilla, you can proceed then.
Okay, so just give me a second here to. Okay, so we had left off on page 1 where I was just giving a breakdown of the subject under review. And I had listed the roll number, the address. We had listed the assessed value. And I did have a recommendation to offer.
Okay.
Go over my recommendation, I guess. The procedure is a little different now, so I'm just curious if I should start that or just go through my brief.
No, I think we'd like to hear your recommendation at this point if you.
Okay, so if I can direct your attention to my brief in page 8, where I have a breakdown of the valuation.
Okay.
And then if I open up my recommendation form here. Okay, so originally we had a, sorry, I'm just getting. Okay, so originally we had a value, each individual premise starting from the top, we had a
If
1,200.
you speak into your mic, please, we can hear you better.
Is that better there?
Not much.
How about now?
Now it's better.
Okay. Okay, so in the first premise, we had a 1,200 square foot space at $9.21 a square foot. We had a 700 square foot premise at $9.56 a square foot. A 1,000 square foot premise at $9.32 a square foot. And then we had the two main floor premises. The first one was 1,400 square feet at $15.07 a square foot, and 1,400 square feet at $16.10 a square foot.
Yes.
After my review of the market data that I took a look at, I decided that the valuation was coming a little bit strong on this property. And so what I decided to do was I tweaked the model to allow the potential overall rent to be lower. So I now have a new set of rents. So on the second floor, the rents had slightly increased based on just how the model was calculating this space. So I actually have a rent now of $10.71 on the first premise, $11.12 per square foot on the second premise at 700 square feet, and then $10.85 at the third premise at 1,000 square feet. However, the main floor premises, they were reduced. So we now have the 1,400 square feet at $12.66 a square foot. And we have the second main floor, 1,400 square feet, now at $13.52 a square foot. As well, I did in my review find that the cap rate was coming in a little strong when what the model was predicting at 7.35%. So I'd also increased the cap rate to 8% to give it more of an appropriate cap rate for the subject property. And the recommended revised value that I have is $747,000.
Thank you. We see how that came. Do you have any questions on that, Mr. Smith?
I don't know.
Based on the fact that you're asking for a lesser amount than met, I'm going to assume you're going to agree to accept that recommendation. Where are you?
I am actually asking for a lesser amount than that. So
Yeah.
I'm based on the rents that are proposed here, and the cap, I'm not necessarily in agreement. No.
Okay, that's so check. Okay, you can go further. I think we understand it. Are there any questions from panel members on how the recommendation was arrived at?
So could you tell us what your average rent that you used in the calculation is?
You know what? It's a little difficult because when I print my income reports that are generated, it actually doesn't show an average rent. I have another one that I could have deduced one from, but I guess if you just give me a second, I can add up the rents here and I can let you
Actually,
know.
if you just tell me the total amount of the rents,
$68,138. That's the total potential rent.
So can you do that again?
$68,138.
Okay, that's what I need. And the cap rate was 8%, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
11.95 per square foot, and then a cap rate at 8%. That's right.
Okay, we can go on now.
Okay. Would you like me to continue with my presentation then? All right. So I believe we are familiar, as we had mentioned, on these subjects.
Speak into your mic again. You keep on drifting away, and we have difficulty hearing you.
Should be a little closer, I guess, or a separate unit.
Yeah, if you could.
It might look a little funny on the camera, but I'll try to speak as clearly as I can here. I'm assuming we're aware of the subject property itself. So on page 2, I just have a picture of the parcel itself in relation to where it's located. Page 3, I have the pictometry of the subject itself, so you can see the overhead view. And then on page 4, I have the south-facing view of the subject and the west-facing view. And then I have my Google street images that are included in the brief. So if you look on page 5, you can just get an idea of the subject property. So we have not received any income and expense mailer information, so I'm not really aware of the particular details of the subject itself. We do have a sale from 2003 for $340,000 on the subject, and we have no leases associated. So I do have a series of rent comparables that I've included, and I do have a rent range on my comparables from $1,260 at the low end, $1,150, sorry, at the low end, up to $1,478, I believe, at the higher end. So they all seem to be within the neighborhood. Are kind of showing where the rents are pointing us to. As I've gone over, I did adjust to the rent on the income stream, and I was able to lower the potential rent by a few $1,000s. And the cap rate was also increased to 8%. On page 9, we have the income value summary of the subject, which has changed, of course, in light of the recommendation. And then on page 10, I have my cap rates. So there's a cap rate study there that shows the particular range appropriate for cap rates. And unfortunately, we don't really have one associated with the standalone retail stores as this one would be. But if you look at strip mall being sort of the lowest one we have, and we have 6 to 6.8% is the typical, we're definitely on the outlier at 8%, which I believe would be appropriate for the subject. And then on page 11, we have some Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then page 12 would be the documentation that the department has in relation to the non-cooperation for the income and expense mailer for 2020. So you can see that it was signed and received, but we never received anything back. And then the following pages in my brief just show the income and expense mailer documentation that would have been sent to the subject. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have any questions?
Yes, just quickly. Given the workload at the assessment department, is it fair to say you haven't had the opportunity to visit either of the two properties today?
It's fair to say, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So just quickly then, looking at the rent comparable page on page number 7, these would, and I did a quick review, these would all be main floor retail spaces, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we don't have any indicators with regard to second floor office space?
I believe you're correct on that.
Okay. And I don't want, I know that you tweaked the model and it brought the overall income down somewhat. Looking at that change, we see the rent on the second floor actually increasing based on the images of the space, etc. Does it seem like the model is necessarily in line with this particular property?
I would say that it's definitely a little eyebrow raising that the rents are slightly higher than what we would like. I was attempting to massage the rents to try to get them to a more appropriate rate, but when I changed the model to some separate parameters that could have potentially been possible, it would calculate the rent to be too low. So my decision was made to just keep what the model had, but I did increase the cap rate to sort of reflect the subject property itself. And
Okay.
Again, without a 2020 mailer to rely on, I don't really have an indicator of what the potential rent would be. So this is basically going on market data itself, just letting me know that the rents coming in originally were a little bit aggressive, and they did need to be slightly changed.
That's fair, certainly. Thank you for that. Just looking at quickly at the rent comps on page 7. So 610 Portage Avenue, this would be the Lions Place seniors housing tower, I believe, right? I'm not aware of there being any retail space in that particular block.
Well, we have it in our system as a commercial space, so perhaps at the moment, the current tenants are using it in that fashion, but the indicators are that it could be retrofitted to use in another fashion if any tenant were to put themselves into it if the lease were to expire. So I just included it as a market indicator, but I haven't seen the comparable myself personally, so I'm sort of going on what we have on file for data.
Okay. Just quickly looking at the Notre Dame spaces, so 770 Notre Dame, that is Manitoba tenant there is Manitoba Nurses Union. It's an office space across from HSC, and then I thought there was another one like that. Those are all of my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions of the,
Yeah, you may have said it and I might have missed it. What's your new NOI with your revised workup?
My new NOI is 59,734.
Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Ms. Penn, do you have any questions?
That was my question as well.
Ms. Penn as well. Okay, so thank you very much. We're complete with this matter, and we'll now go on to the next. That would be, give me a second. Is that 227 Henderson Highway? Yes, yes. Okay, when you're ready, Mr. Bettinella.
So give you guys a second to open up my brief. Ready to go? Okay, so the file number is 22-3657. The roll number is 14100126805. And the address is 227 Henderson Highway. The assessed value for the roll year 2023 had gone out at $1,680,000. And I do have a recommendation to make on this file.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second to open up my. Okay, and then if I can direct your attention to page 8 of my brief.
Yeah.
So originally we have two premises that are on this space. One of them is we have it as a basement premise, 4,990 square feet, $2.91 a square foot. And then we have the main floor retail space at 8,536 square feet at $15.54 per square foot. That was the original valuation. After a review of the subject property itself, it was decided that the model was coming in a little bit strong and that an override was needed on the rental rates themselves. And so I do have a new rental rate for the basement. It's now been reduced to $2 per square foot from $2.91 per square foot. And then I also have a new rental rate on the main floor of $14 a square foot. So with that rental rate adjustment, we kept the model parameters that were in place on the subject. So we have 6% vacancy, 3% expenses this cycle, and a $7 shortfall per square foot. And then we have a overall a cap rate applied of 7.65% to the new net operating income of $112,383. And then that gives us an overall revised assessment of $1,469,000.
I'm sorry, what was that last amount, Mr. Bettinella?
$1,469,000.
And I'm sorry, can you also repeat your NOI as well?
My NOI was $112,383.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Smith, I guess my question of you right now is that acceptable?
No, we're not in agreement on the value.
Okay, please proceed, Mr. Paganello.
Okay, so if we refer back to my page 2 of my brief, we'll go through the subject itself. And so I have included our pad eye view image of the subject property. On page 3, I have my pictometry. So you have the overhead view of the subject property. Page 4 shows the north-facing view of the subject property itself. Its relation to its location on Henderson Highway there, on the corner of Johnson, just about near the corner of Johnson Avenue. And then we have the west-facing view of the subject property. And then on the Google Street View images, we have some more pictures of the subject itself. And this is from the 2021 map update. So we can see that the subject has had some alterations done to the exterior, has had some facelift, so to speak. If we go to page 7 of my brief now, page 6 of my brief, we do have a mailer received from them. We have no subject sale history and we have no property lease information on the subject itself. And then on page 7 of my brief, I've included some comparables in relation to our subject. And we can see the rent range there as a spread from $10.56 at the lower end up to $23.47 at the higher end. And all of these were attempted to be kept within the same effective year as our subject, which is 1980 overall. And then on page 8, I did have my original valuation. So we've gone over that already, but there was a revision to the rent rates themselves. And then we had the same model parameters applied to that for the revised value that we had spoken about.
Yeah, you're fading again.
Sorry.
You're gonna have to speak into your speaker.
I'm gonna have to look like I'm smudged into the screen like this.
Well, it's okay. We don't have to look at you, but we do have to hear you.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe that's better for me then. And then on page 9, I have the income value summary, but again, that has changed from what it's showing there, sorry. On page 10, I have our cap rate study information that we have for this cycle. And so we do show the spread there, and our subject is at 7.65%. And then on page 11, we have the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts in relation to assessing the properties. And then page 12 to the end of the brief, page 17 has the income and expense mailer information. And that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, any questions?
Yes, just a couple. So looking at page number 7 and the rental comparables here. These are all strip mall. Well, not all. Nearly all strip mall locations. Is that correct?
The majority of them are. Unfortunately, it's hard to find of this size of property that would be similar and close to the subject. It was a little difficult to find that information, so I had to rely on some other market indicators of current lease rates.
Certainly, and that's certainly fair. So the strip mall locations are all considerably smaller when I look at them here: 1040, 2500, 1202, 3960. So these would typically drive higher rents based on the size of the unit and supported retail, etc. Correct?
That is correct, although I would point the panel to the income information that we have itself, which shows that the rent rates are considerably lower than the ones you're pointing to at the moment.
So, I'm sorry, the rent rates for the subject?
For the subject, yeah.
Okay, the subject is owner occupied.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think we have any.
I'm sorry, no. What I was referring to is that the information or the rent rates that we have on the valuation stream are considerably lower than the comparable data that you're showing at the moment. But there is an inverse relationship that the lower the square footage, the higher the rent rates. That is typical of the market. That's correct.
Okay. And then just quickly, when I look at the two comps that are of a larger size, so 930 Nairn
Yep.
which has 14,517 square foot, has a lease rate of 1150, and then 1905 Main, just over 7,001 square feet. And we have a rent rate of $11.39 a square foot. Both of these are significantly lower than the 14 that is now applied to the subject. I certainly agree that it's hard to find larger freestanding space to find comparables. Would this not indicate a lower rental rate than the 14 that's applied to the main floor?
I believe it would indicate a lower rental rate than what the model had originally predicted. The range might be a little bit difficult to pinpoint exactly, but I do agree with you that the model had originally given a rent rate that I believe would have been a little bit aggressive for the subject property itself.
Okay, those are all of my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Tan, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
And I don't either. So, Mr. Smith, you can proceed with your
Okay,
presentation.
great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So 227 Henderson Highway is our property today. If you look at the front cover of my brief, you can see an exterior of the front of the building. It actually it's a single property now. It was formerly two different buildings, which we'll get into. You can see, if you look at the front cover, kind of the dividing line between the two, obviously in the photo there. Let's locate ourselves. Page number 12 gives you the location of the subject property on the map, 227 Henderson. So it's located on the east side of Henderson, in that Elmwood area, just north of the Disraeli Freeway, just north of the river there. So quite close to the downtown and in that Elmwood area. It's an area of older street front retail, without any particular, there's one strip mall that I can think of, but it's an older one as well. Generally, we're looking at older development in this particular area. Let's look at my page numbers 2 and 3. So our market value that we've developed based on the market parameters is $1,209,000 for the 2023 assessment. That compares to the 2023 assessment of $1,680,000. Now, if you look at the history of the property in previous cycles, you can see the steady progression in valuation on appeal from just over $1 million up to $1,225,000 on decision at the Board of Revision. And last time, obviously, my valuation was slightly lower than that in the last cycle. And I haven't worked out the gap there, but we're looking at an increase of, I recognize that there's a reduction being proposed by the city, but the original 2023 assessment was a lift of $455,000. I haven't done the math there. That's roughly 30%. Again, beyond what we would see in the marketplace. The property zone C2, there's two buildings again melded into one. Original ages of 1920 and 1929, so that is what the structures are. It is a street front retail store, owner occupied. And we have a leasable area of 8,536 square feet. So this is an important point here. And I forgot to ask this question of the city with regard to their lease rates. When you're in the marketplace and looking to either rent a space or lease a space as the owner, it's the main floor space that is both advertised and leased in the final lease documents. If there's a basement space that accompanies that accompanies that main floor, that's great. Certainly there and forms part of the whole, and is there for use by the tenancy, but it's not included in the leasable space. I can show you any number of examples of this. That is the standard in Winnipeg. It's the typical standard in most markets. Basement space comes along with the main floor. Now, does it have an influence? If it's a developed basement or a very usable basement of some kind, then it can lead to a higher rental rate for the actual leasable space because of the utility of the basement. But that space does not get included in the leasable area for that property. So let's look at the building description, bottom of page 3. Go through it in fairly big detail here. I'm not going to cover it all. Again, there were 2 buildings. The property owner owned the building to the north. He bought the building to the south and amalgamated them. Went through the exercise of opening the one building up to the other to form one open floor space and put in the required heating, etc., for a space of that size. So there is a description for you there. We also have the photos for you to see. With regard to the basement ceiling height varies between 7 and 7.5 feet. It's very low. It's not occupiable space. They do obviously use it for storage and some minor work that they do on bicycles, as it is a bicycle store, bicycle retail and repair store. We're looking at a mix of concrete and wood flooring in the basement, open wood trusses as your ceiling space. So low ceiling height, lack of adequate exits, I believe, for occupiable space, limits that utility to essentially storage. Now, do they use it for storage? Certainly, that it's there, it's available, and that, of course, is taken into account in the rate that we apply to the main floor leasable space. So overall, it would be considered to be in average condition. If you flip forward to the photos beginning on page 4, you can see the property as it sits now at the top of page 4. The bottom, you can see the former building that they purchased, Powell's Supermarket, which was then amalgamated into the whole. There's a side parking lot, and the rear of the building, page number 5, giving you an indication of the age of the structure for that one. And the rear of the other building, top of page 6, stucco exterior, but it's actually from the same time frame. Then we have the interior of the main floor, pages 6 and 7, wide open space. As you can see, it's wood truss ceiling, open deck, open ducting, etc. is how they've completed the renovation. Then some of the rear space where the office and storage is. And then we get into the basement space on page 9. You can see the concrete flooring, low ceiling, and the division between the 2 buildings, or kind of 3 spaces actually. You can see the brick structural walls with the narrow gap in between them, wood flooring, bottom page 10. So that is the property that we're looking at. Now, the main floor space, 8,536 square feet. This is certainly outsized in terms of a retail location for a standalone property to rent in our market. Are there spaces of that size? Yes, of course there are. Typically, they're in either retail strips where they've combined units where a tenant needed greater space. Although 8,000 plus square feet is certainly larger than normal, but generally we're looking at power centers when we get into units of this size. So it is not the norm, and we can't compare power center space to big box to standalone properties such as the subject. So I've described the area that the property sits in. We don't need to go through that. There is a vacant lot just north of the subject property at the corner of Henderson and Johnson that was vacant for 20 years, a little over 20 years actually, with no development taking place at that time. I think they're remediating it at this point. I'm not, if I recall, but I have yet to see any development take place on that site. So not looking at an area that's in heavy demand, and the remainder of the area is, again, typically older street front retail. So let's move on to the valuation, page number 15. It is challenging to find leases of this size. So what we've tried to do is find space that will help us frame a fair value for net rent for the subject property. First comparable on page number 15, number 2, Donald. This is the former industrial building, now strip mall, located as you head south from downtown over the Donald Street Bridge, where Gord's Cycle and Ski used to be located. There's now a dog spa, I believe, on the frontage there. We have $11 a square foot rent there for just under 2,500 square feet. Close to downtown. Not the same size, obviously, but they're achieving $11 there on the frontage. 1875 Pembina, this is again just north of Bishop Grandin, 2017 lease for $11 a square foot. It's on the west side of Pembina, a bit setback. They get $11 there. 850 Regent, this is a Giant Tiger anchored, not Giant Tiger itself. They're achieving $10.50 a square foot. That location. 2140 McPhillips is a strip mall just south of Garden City Shopping Center, $10.50 a square foot rent there. Let's look at some of our larger ones. 1875 Pembina, 8685 square feet, built in 1978. 10-year lease at $10 a square foot at that location. 1111 Logan is located on the corner of McPhillips. We have 6,974 square feet leased in 2018 for $9 a square foot. 1987 age on that structure. 1271 Jefferson. This is Maples Marketplace. It's the shopping center in the Maples area itself. This is, I believe, Lucky Supermarket at $12. You get the general idea here. Another space there at $12 a square foot. They're a little older, but they're of the correct size. I'm not going to run through each and every one here, but we have some further ones actually, and of note just at the bottom. I'll quickly point to those. 839 Cavalier grocery store, 2016 lease at $12 a square foot for 11,000+ square feet. And then finally 1501 Gateway, the last one, 2017 lease. Newer structure, 1979, 7,850 square feet at $9.50 a square foot. Now, those are that's what the market is telling us as far as rental rates for properties of that size. We again are looking at property that does have basement space available to the occupant, which does serve a purpose. It's not leasable area, but it does exist. So we have bumped our rate up somewhat from what we see in the market, and we've applied $13 a square foot to the main floor space, which is the leasable area. That is how the property would be dealt with in the market if it were to come to the market for lease. They would advertise the main floor space, and that's how it would be dealt with. The expense side, we've applied a 4% vacancy in our valuation. The stats are there for you. Our expense allowance commentary remains the same. And we're not in disagreement with the shortfall allowance at $7 a square foot. On the capitalization rate side, let's look at this. I've already described our comps in our cap rate study. Again, the strip center statistics from the national brokers, Cushman & Wakefield and Cedar Richard Ellis, are between 6.5 to 7.25 for non-anchored retail strips. As of that level, we're looking at a standalone, oversized retail street front of larger than normal leasable area, which would of course lead to lesser demand, there being less tenants for a property of that size. It's in that area of Henderson, just north of the downtown. Older street front retail, again, lesser demand, lesser parking available, etc. Our comps show between 7.5, 8.9% in terms of capitalization rate. A standalone retail street front property such as this, all a single space, so single occupant. You can't divide the risk by having multi-tenants here. Certainly there would be a risk premium applied to it. So we felt that a rate of 8% for this particular property would be appropriate. And this would give you our final market value of $1,209,000. So again, I would point to the article at the very back of our brief here with regard to the impacts on the retail commercial marketplace in Winnipeg in this particular time frame. So envision taking this property to market as of April 1, 2021. In that time frame. And what would that property trade for? Would there be strong demand for retail space at that time frame? As an investor, where you have an oversized standalone property? No, there would not. So this certainly needs to be taken into account in considering the final value. So all of that has been looked at, and our final market value is $1,209,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Patinella, any questions?
I was going to ask about the discrepancy in leasable area, but Mr. Smith has gone over it, so I thank him for that. I guess my only concern is that, when you take out the size of the basement, it makes a considerable difference on the overall price per square foot. And the information that I looked at, including the pictures and information in the brief, in Mr. Smith's brief, to me do indicate that there is value in the basement. It's a 4,900 square foot space. They they use it for storage. They do use it for bike repair. So there is
questions. Excuse me, right now you can do a summation later, but you're asking questions right now.
All right. So my question I was just leading up to it. So my question would just be, would you feel that it's appropriate to sort of negate the, I guess, the impact that the space would have in your overall leasable area when there is that much utility to it? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. Happy to answer it. So as I'd stated in the Winnipeg market, the properties that do have basement space, such as this, do not have the basement space included in the leasable area. This is well known. It's been stated both by myself and all other agents presenting before this board for many years. If we look at advertised space out there, it will invariably follow what we're saying, unless it's built out with multiple access and signage and was designated as such. If it were, say, a bowling alley or something of that nature, then sure, that could be included. Otherwise, no. What it when that space is included in the leasable area, it artificially actually inflates the value of the property because there is no revenue that's driven from that other than that potential lift in rental rate for the main floor leasable area, which we've accounted for in the lease rate that we've applied to the property. So we've certainly included any potential value that basement space would add in the rental rate that we're applying, but we're not adding value to the property artificially by including it as leasable area.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Patanella, do you have any other questions?
Oh, sorry. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McFadden, do you have any questions?
Just to say, so you've indicated that you've accounted for the value of the basement space with a rental rate of 13, which is still significantly lower than what the city's adjusted rental rate is.
Yes, I believe the city applies $14 a square foot. So when I look at the size and location, supportive retail of the comps that the city has included, I don't consider them particularly comparable to the subjects. So I certainly recognize and thank the city for recognizing that the initial rate was too high, but we don't believe that the 14 would be supportable in the market based on what we're seeing either. There's very few standalone properties of this size that are tenanted, so it's very difficult to have lease rates that are out there to provide as comparison as the assessor has indicated as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Stevens, any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. I guess you're asking that we attribute a value now of $1,209,000, and you're indicating also, I think in your information, that the board reduced in the last hearing to $1,225,000. Did you appeal the board's order last time?
No, we did not appeal the order. The owner of the property didn't respond in the correct time frame.
Okay, so you're asking then that without appealing that we reduce the amount now to a lesser amount than it was the last time?
Yes, I am. My valuation at that time was below the valuation that we have for this time. It wasn't, the board didn't go exactly to where I was at, but certainly we feel strongly that what we're putting forward is representative of market value for the property.
Okay, and then this property itself, I know where it is, but I've been in it.
Yes.
So I guess the first question is, I know that the retail space, and I've saw from the photographs that you submitted, is pretty full of bikes. There's not a lot of room for storage or other things there. It's a retail establishment. It's a showroom, correct?
It is a showroom, yes.
And it's basically a showroom. So the space is used because there's a lot of bikes in there.
There are a lot of bikes in there. There's certainly less in the last 2 years, given the supply chain issues that they're having in retail in general, and certainly in the bicycle industry, they have a lot less bikes available to them. But yes, it is retail display space for their product.
And they do have more bikes than they did a couple of years ago with COVID. There were no bikes basically.
Yes,
for a while. So the downstairs, I know they do a lot of. They have a lot of bikes downstairs that are not built yet, correct? In boxes.
Yes, that is where they store a lot of the incoming product before it gets assembled. Yes,
and this year they happen to have a lot of bikes, I would imagine. Much more than they did.
Certainly, they bring in the product they need to sell to the marketplace. Yes,
and they build those
like
bikes.
Any retailer, they need a place to store them.
And they build the bikes downstairs.
They built some of the bikes downstairs.
They built the bikes downstairs. The bikes come in boxes and they're put together downstairs.
So I'm very familiar with both the owner and the property, and I have been through the basement. And yes, they do assemble some of the bikes downstairs. bought this new portion of the building, and they have a repair and assembly area at the rear of the upper space as well. But yes, some of the bikes do get assembled downstairs still.
And are repairs done downstairs, or are they done?
Most of that's on the main floor now.
Also, they have a main floor space
That
for
was
that now.
part of the reason for the purchase of the building that came up beside them.
Okay, that's a space I haven't been in, because obviously if you're a customer in the store, you don't get to see the repair location. So I assume it was probably downstairs. So thanks for correcting me.
Well, so originally, and in their original building, yes, they didn't have this enough space on the main floor for them to have their repair space. So envision being the poor mechanics working in windowless space, 7.5 foot ceilings, etc., assembling bikes all day long. So that's what they were.
Yeah, or
That's
do
what they were.
tune-ups on older bikes.
Well, tune-ups on any bike that comes in, yes,
right.
yeah. So they do still obviously do some of that in the basement space. So yes, it is used as basement space can be used. Is it occupiable, leasable space? No, it is not. There's no windows. There's no suitable flooring, exits, bathrooms, anything of that nature. So,
But it is essential to the businesses that operated there right now. They couldn't operate without that basement space.
no, and again, I've accounted for that in the lease rate for the main space.
No, I understand. Okay, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
And the last thing, you pointed out that COVID had created difficulties for retail space at the time, and I agree. Retail space ordinarily would be easy to rent at that time, perhaps, but you have to admit that the business that they're in was enhanced by COVID. Bikes became very popular because people were.
Well, so now we're getting into business versus property value, right?
Yeah.
Which is not what we're valuing today. I can certainly provide you background on this. So I do the appeals both for this particular property owner for Bikes and Beyond, as well as Woodcock Cycle Works on Pembina. I'm a very long-term cyclist. My kids race. Couldn't be more familiar with the industry. Yes, a lot of bikes were sold. They struggled mightily during that time frame to bring product in, and as the both producers of the frames and more so the components had great difficulties in getting the raw materials to produce it, and then there's the backlog and shipping, etc. So there was a huge, and still is, they're not back to normal yet, a huge gap in their availability to bring product in. So they had to look to other brands and things, and even that was a struggle. So there was a significant drop off in their availability of product to sell. Did people buy more bikes in general? Perhaps, but again, we're now dealing not with the value of the property. We're talking about the business itself, which is not what we're valuing.
I know.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
That completes your matters. So thank you for your.
Thank you very much.
So do we need a break before we go forward, or? Okay, so we'll keep 5 minutes in.
Okay, yes.
Okay, we're resuming the hearing, and next property is 1847 Main Street, and we'll swear in Mr. DuPont.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Didn't hear.
State your full name.
Oh, Henry DuPont.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
So Mr. Partinella, we're now dealing with 1847 Main Street, and you can go ahead at this point.
Okay. So the file number under review is 22-1848. The roll number is 1100-100-7000. The address is 1847 Main Street. The 2023 assessed value has gone out at $515,000. And I am looking for a applicant for a non-cooperation to be placed on this file.
Okay, please recite your evidence with regard to why you're making the application.
Okay, so if we go into my brief and we go over to towards the end at page 12, I do have a document from Canada Post that shows that the delivery was made and signed for. And then the following documentation following that is the original income and expense mailer documents that would have been sent to the subject.
And they're not completed, I assume, because it wasn't received back.
That's correct.
And that's your application basis?
And that is my application basis, correct?
Mr. DuPont, what's your position?
I don't dispute the penalty.
Okay, and I've already had discussions of similar matters with my panel members before, so on the basis we're going to grant it. And Mr. DuPont, therefore, as you know, the onus shifts to you and you can go first, therefore. So you can see the
Yes, so you have my report. You can please open that.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay. So first page shows that we're looking for a 336,000. We show a photo, and so you see that the windows are all closed up. They're blocked off. They don't want the people to see in. And you see the second story behind. That's a new addition that they built. That's behind. And the next page. It says property next door, 1839 Main. That's the main store for Don's photo. The 2023 settled at 1075 per square foot, which was a 7.2% reduction. The original was 1158, 1350 main floor, 844 second floor. The cap rate 7.45. So this is a superior location and superior interior finish. The subject is newer. Or original age of the subject 1955 versus 1839 Main at 1974. So our main argument is to compare it to the property next door. So the subject property is the lab for the retail property next door. We also have photos. The next page is the first floor. Original, you can see it's kind of a warehouse. It's not a retail. Then the next photo shows the rear. That's you see the loading door in the back. It's on finished floor, finished ceiling. Then the next photo is same thing. It's kind of a warehouse. It's all storage. And then the loading dock is shown at the next photo. So then we have the regular part of the report, the intended use, etc. We can skip to property description, page 11. So we see it's not typical retail. It's mainly used as a lab, a storage area, has a low level finish or warehouse finish. Windows are covered up, public cannot see inside. From the 2014 photos, which I said there's no ceiling finish, flooring appears old tile or concrete. Rear concrete block walls, loading area. Second floor is at the rear of the building, has 1,000 square feet. So the commercial section detail shows the 1955 section, 1 story. That's the front. And then the 2-story built in 2005. 1,000 square feet for each floor, but that's at the rear. That's what's used as warehouse loading area. Sorry, the comments that the city has effective age 1981. However, new addition into the rear of the building, it's warehouse. We have the map. There's no front parking, so a lot of the essential comparables are all for strip malls or buildings with the side parking, etc. So this is just the rear parking. Then we have some clauses. Burn proof is on the assessor normally, which were site specific. Page 16. The 22 business assessment, they broke it down 306 square feet, 1,000 square feet. We're not too sure what that 1,000 square feet is, whether it's second floor, the main floor in the back. So the overall was assessed 18 per square foot. Second floor was, or second floor of the 1,000 square feet was 1,290 per square foot. So we, next page, 18, we have some rental comparables. We show some of the addresses that we have. First one, 1031 McGregor, has 4 properties. That's a retail, so they had the rents 12, 950, 10, 8. We have some more, and then the average 987, median $10. And the property next door is shown, and that's the one Donna's for retail, was 1350 for the main area at 844, and that's the one we settled. It was assessed overall 158, and we settled 1075 per square foot overall. There was no breakdown of the main second floor for the settlement. Cap rate 7.75. So this property is superior for exterior and interior. So it has Don's photo has a very nice curb appeal. It's newer from the front. So we believe that 1847 Main would have a market value of 75% of 1839 Main. So it would make it overall rent 806. The settled rent next door 1075 times 75%. Then we do exercise of calculating what it would be. If we give 880 for the main floor, 580 for the second floor. Normally second floor is less. We would get the rent 806, which would be 32,737. So the cap rate, the bottom page 19, city has a cap rate 7%, which is 4.5% less than the superior property 1839 Main. Should be the other way around. It should be 0.5% more because it's inferior. So page 20 is our income approach. That's the rent that we had. Went the rent above the vacancy, same as just as we're seeing the shortfall. Cap rate 8% comes 336,000. Appendix shows how the assessor did it. The building area. In the 1835 Main, and that's part of our main report. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pettinelli, any questions?
No, I have no questions.
Ms. Stevens, do you have any questions?
Well, a couple. You mentioned several times that the windows are covered. That's just, that doesn't really affect the value of the property, does it?
Well,
I mean, that's something they've chosen to do.
Because it's not an attractive interior. The owner is hiding it from the public.
Okay.
But in essence, it doesn't deter from the value. It shows that it's another level of proof to show that they're hiding the finish because it's not attractive to the public.
And your rental values are in general significantly lower than what your comps show. Now, I'm just wondering, did you have any pictures of the second floor, or were those all the main floor?
I think it's all the main floor.
So what kind of condition is the second floor of the building in?
I don't know.
Do you know what's up there?
I don't know either.
No. Okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mathad, do you have any questions?
I have no question. Thank you.
And I don't either. Thank you. So, Mr. Pettinelli, you can proceed.
Okay. So if we go back to my page 1 where I was giving the outline of the property, we can move forward. So the subject is a commercial retail store. There's 2 stories to it. We have an effective year of both 1955 and 2005, I guess, to account for both of the original building and the addition that was placed on it. And I actually do have a recommendation to make on this property.
Okay,
So if you can skip forward to my valuation on page 8.
okay, just give me a minute.
Yep.
Okay,
So originally we had the subject valued at 3,061 square feet at $9.02 per square foot. And that's on the main floor, I believe. And then the second floor was 1,000 square feet at $13.81 per square foot. After a review on the property, it was deemed that the second floor rental rate was coming in a little aggressive. So I was able to make an adjustment on the model, and I do have a new rental rate on the second floor for 1,000 square feet at $9.97 per square foot. And then the rest of the valuation stream should follow. So we have the 6% vacancy, 3% expenses, a $7 shortfall for a new net operating income, a revised net operating income of $32,559. And I have maintained the 7% cap rate that the model had predicted for the subject. And so I do have a revised value of $465,000. And perhaps I would like to say in advance of that as well that I do apologize to Mr. DuPont. We've been really busy with our workloads here. I didn't have a chance to get in contact with him, but I do have recommendations for some of these files, just so he's aware.
okay, and based on the fact that Mr. DuPont, you're asking for $336,000, I'm assuming, since you've already made your presentation anyway, that you're not accepting the city's recommendation.
No, I'm not accepting. So what's the value that you have?
$465,000. 465.
I forgot to write it down.
That's fine.
You can continue. I'm not accepting.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so if that's the case, we have gone over some of the pictures of the subject, so I won't spend too much time on it. But if you refer back to page 2 of my brief, I do have an image of the pad eye view of the subject property, so you can see its relation to Main Street. I have an overhead view following up next to show the subject property. On page 4, I have a north-facing view of the subject followed by a west-facing view, just to show its orientation and location in the neighborhood. And then following that, I have some Google Street images put into the brief showing the subject property itself. We have not received an income and expense mailer on the subject property, and we have no lease information or any sales history on the subject itself. I do have for my rent comparables a spread in my comparables ranging from $10 per square foot on the lower end up to $17 on the higher end. So there is a range there within the neighborhood. And then on page 8, that's my original valuation. So you can see that I did have $9.02 per square foot on the main floor, and then $13.81 per square foot on the second floor, for a total area of 4,061 square feet and an original value of $515,000 with the model parameters, which has been adjusted to 465 with the adjustment on the second floor rent. Following that, I do have the original income value summary on page 9. Page 10 has the cap rate information that we have. Again, we don't have one for the specific subject, but we do show at the lower end of our portfolio for strip malls, we do have a range from 6 to 6.8% between the 20th and 80th percentile. And then we have that following that, we have our municipal assessment at excerpts. And then I have included the documentation that we have for the non-cooperation for the 2020 income and expense mailer information. And that will take us to the end of my brief, and that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. DuPont, questions?
Yes, your comparables. 1830 Main, That's a modern strip mall in front of the subject, is that correct? With front parking?
It is, that's correct.
And the other properties, 1560 Main, 1960 Main, 1924, those will all be all properties with front parking, more of a strip mall.
I'd have to review each individual one, but I'll take your word on it. If you took a look at them, yeah, it could be.
So the front parking, the strip malls would be superior to the subject. Would you agree with that?
They would definitely have an influence on the value of the realty. However, I have adjusted for that with my adjustment to the rental rates, but you're right that it would have an influence on it.
So would you agree that the main building at Don's photo at 1839 is superior to the subject?
The one that's across the street, 1830, it would be superior. That is correct. But again, the rental rates are reflective of that we have on the subject itself.
Yeah, I'm talking about 1839 Main Street.
Oh, sorry, 1839.
The main photo of Don's photo. The main
The main building. Yep.
Yeah, you would say that would be superior to this property.
Well, they're side by side, they're separate parcels, so there's argument to be made that perhaps they're currently being viewed as one subject when in fact they are two different parcels. So it's a little difficult to say, to confirm whether or not they would be superior, inferior. They could both just be reflective of themselves with one sitting side by side on Main Street. They both have the same advantage of being forward facing on Main Street. And again, I have done an adjustment on the rental rate to sort of bring it more in line with what I feel would be applicable for the subject.
Now, would you agree that the second floor is usually given a rate that's 50% to 2/3 of the main floor rent normally?
I would agree on average that would be the observation.
And why did you not do it this time?
Well, I believe since I'm using model-based rental rates that I did make a reduction on the rental rate for the second floor, but there is an economy of scales involved. So the higher the square footage would be in the premise, the lower the rental rate would be. So given the fact that it's a 1,000 square foot premise, the model was coming in at what it would feel would be an appropriate, based on its quality, an appropriate rental rate.
So the model would normally recognize a lower rent for second floor. It did not at this time.
That is a factor, yes, but there's also other factors involved, including size, etc.
Size and age. So the model is kicking in size and age and gives it a higher rent, even though normally it would be the other way.
There are very many factors that influence the model's rental rate.
And you apply the model rent. So would you agree to personally that it should be lower than the main floor rent?
Look at it per square foot basis, it is much lower. But given the fact that it's only a 1,000 square foot premise, the model's coming in at just around the same as the main floor, which I believe is indicative. I mean, we can look at the overall price that's being put on the subject itself as opposed to each individual premise. And if you just give me a second here. The overall price, we do get looks like a blended rate of $9.25 overall. So I believe that's a fair rental rate overall on the subject.
What about the cap rate? Should the subject cap rate be higher cap rate than 1839 Main, the Don's main building?
Again, they're different parcels or different roll numbers. They are side by side. It's difficult to say whether it should or it shouldn't. In this situation, the model had given a 7% cap rate and I didn't dispute it. If the panel feels different, they'll make a recommendation on
it. That's all questions.
Thank you. Mrs. Fan, do you have any questions?
I have no further question.
Stephen, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
And I guess, there's a question that Mrs. Stevens had asked Mr. DuPont. We haven't seen any photographs upstairs. And we do note that the rent is a little bit higher than on the main floor. I know you said it was partly because of economy of scale, but are there any photographs anywhere of what the upstairs premises look like?
For myself, I have not received nor seen any photo evidence in regards to the second floor. And considering we didn't have the income and expense mailer, it was difficult to know exactly what was being received on the second floor.
Okay, well, I do know that the burden of proof on this one has shifted to Mr. DuPont because of the application that we agreed to. So, okay, thank you. So this completes this matter. We can then go on with our next, which is 1825 Main Street. Mr. Buttonwillow, when you're ready to proceed.
Okay. Just give me 1 second to open up the brief. Just 1 second to open up the application form. So the next file that we are speaking of is file number 22-3231. The roll number is 1100-078-7000. The address is 1825 Main Street. The assessment had gone out for 2023 at $368,000. And I do have a recommendation to make on this file.
Okay.
So if you proceed forward to page, to page 9 of my brief. I'll give you a second to get there.
When you're ready.
Okay, so we have 2 premises associated with the space. We have one premise of 2,000 square feet at $13.31 per square foot. And then we also had a storage mezzanine space associated that's 880 square feet at $3.83 per square foot. After a review of the property, it was deemed that the model was coming in a little strong on this property, so there was an adjustment made to the rents. So we have a new rental rate on the main floor of $11.18 per square foot. And then we have a new rental rate on the second component, the storage mezzanine component, 880 square feet. It's now at $4.46 a square foot. So we have an overall total potential rent of $26,000, and this is for the revised recommendation. We have a total potential rent of $26,285. As well, after a review of the subject property, it was determined that a higher vacancy was appropriate for the subject. So I have increased the vacancy based on my review to 10.75%. So we now have an updated vacancy of 10.75% to the subject. We have 3% expenses, $7 shortfall, and then we have a new net operating income of $20,588. And we have a cap rate applied.
Excuse me, could you give us the NOI again?
The NOI is $20,588.
Thank you.
And then on that new NOI, we have a cap rate of 7.10%. That's a model-based cap rate, which gives us a revised value, of $290,000.
Okay, Mr. DuPont, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, I'll accept.
Okay, I think you went through how you arrived at it satisfactorily, so I don't think we have any questions. So thank you, Mr. Buttonwillow.
You're welcome.
So we'll now proceed then with 1905 Main Street.
Okay, just give me 1
Mr.
second.
Buttonwillow, when you're ready.
Sure, I'm just going to open up the brief. Just give me 1 second here. And so that was 1905 Main Street, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I am ready to proceed with my presentation on this file. So we are now at file number 22-1785. The roll number is 1100-083-8000. The address is 1905 Main Street.
Okay, you know what? Actually, I got to tell you that at this point, I didn't realize this would be on the docket today, but K4 Properties is a very good friend of mine. Not only a good friend, but I was his lawyer when I was practicing. I'm still friends with him and his wife today. And under those circumstances, I cannot hear this. The choice would be for Ms. Stevens and Ms. McFadden to hear it without my presence, in which case, there'll only be two people making the decision, which does not line up with what the base requirements are, but I think you can accept it and go with it or reschedule to another hearing. So I'll leave that to Mr. DuPont at this point, because,
I'll accept the two members.
okay, and that's actually Mr. Putnella?
I believe so, yeah. This is the first time for me, but if that's the case and that's the procedure, then I'll go with the procedure of the board on it.
Okay, on that basis, I could leave the room while this is being heard, and they can call me back in, and we can that way proceed in the same order that things are in.
Oh, I see.
And, I can give over the chair to either of the members who would like to take it. I know Ms. Stevens, I've sat with her before as a chair, and I thought she did an excellent job. So if that's actually
acceptable to me.
okay, and so Ms. Stevens, if you can proceed as chair of this.
Okay. Sure,
And
absolutely.
also, when we deliberate on this one, I will not be in the room as well. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
Okay, is Mr. Diamond departed the room?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Pontinelli, you've read this into the roll number onto the record, so please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, so the original 2023 assessment had gone out at $2,116,000, and I do have a recommendation to make on the property.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay, so if you go to page, I believe it's page 9 of my brief, you'll see that the original valuation, we have 4 premises on the valuation stream. We have 2 standard finish premises. The first one is 4,130 square feet at $11.46 per square foot. And then we have a 7,001 square foot premise at $15.31 per square foot. And then we have the following 2 storage or mezzanine spaces that we have included on the valuation stream. The first one is 2,100 square feet at $9.06 per square foot. And the second is 2,800 square feet at $5.30 per square foot. So after a review of the property, it was deemed that the overall potential rent seemed to be coming in a little more aggressively than what we would like for the subject itself. And so we now have a revised rental rate. So going back to the very top, the revised rent for the first premise at 4,130 square feet is now $9.85 per square foot. The second premise at 7,001 square feet has now been revised to $13.16 per square foot. The following 2,100 square foot premise has been reduced to $7.79 per square foot. And finally, the 2,800 square foot storage space has been reduced to $4.56 per square foot. We do have the same model parameters. So we have a 6% vacancy, we have a 3% expense, and a $7 shortfall, which gives us a revised net operating income of $140,925. And on that net operating income, we have applied a 7.8% cap rate, which does give us a revised value of $1,807,000.
Okay.
1,007,000.
Sorry, 1,807,000?
That's right, 1,807,000.
Okay, Mr. DuPont, do you accept that value?
Yeah, I'll accept.
Okay, thank you. I'll just double check, Ms. McFadden, you do have any questions regarding that, or?
I have no questions, no.
No, and I do not either. Okay, thank you. So the recommendation has been accepted. So Jaswinder, I think you can ask Mr. Diamond to return.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to agenda item number 8, which is 1000 McPhillips Street. And Mr. Butler, when you're ready, you can proceed.
Okay, so the next file on the agenda is file number 22-1647. The roll number is 1405-181-1300. The address is 1000 McPhillips Street. The 2023 assessment had gone out at $1,118,000. And for the property description, it is a commercial retail store. We have an actual and effective year on it of 1973. And we have a total gross leasable area of 8,942 square feet. The following are pictures of the subject property itself. So you can see the first one is the pad eye view of the subject and its relation to McPhillips. Following that, we have an overhead view of the subject property itself. So you can see its orientation to McPhillips on the corner of McPhillips and Mountain Avenue. Following that, we have a north-facing view of the subject property and a west-facing view of the subject property. And then from there on page 5 begins the Google Street View images. So you can see the subject itself that we're speaking of currently and all the different angles on the subject. So we have received a mailer for 2020. We do have a sales on the subject itself in 2010 for $650,000. And we have no lease information on the subject property. For my rent comparables, I do have a spread of rent comparables. I will note that some of them might not be within the particular neighborhood of the subject, as well as some of them might not be even within the same market region. I'm referring specifically to 839 Cavalier Drive. But the subjects are used in a similar fashion. So I wanted to try to find some comparable lease information, not only from the neighborhood itself or the market region, but also for comparable property types that were used in a similar fashion. So you can see that there is a spread there from $9.60 on the lower end all the way up to $23.47 on the much higher end. So if you look at the subject property itself, on the following page, on page 8, we do have 8,942 square feet. And we do have a modeled rent rate of $10.81 per square foot. So if we go through the following parameters, we do have all the model parameters applied. So we have a 6% vacancy, a 3% expense rate, and a $7 shortfall, which gives us our net operating income of $84,381. And we have applied a modeled cap rate of 7.55%. which gives us our 2023 value of $1,118,000. So from there on page 9, you can see a summary of our income stream that we have placed on the subject. Following that, on page 10, we do have our cap rate spread information. We don't have a similar property that's on for retail, but we do have, again, strip mall being the lowest of the portfolio being shown there, and we do have between 6 and 6.8% as the 20th and 80th percentile. And we do have some municipal assessment at excerpts on page 11, and then following that, we do have the mailer information, which does show, although it's owner occupied, it gives an idea of the rental income they received, but it does also say that it's owner occupied, so it's more of a market indicator that I would use for myself. And then following that, we have to the end of the brief. That's the mailer for 2020, and that's my presentation on this file.
Thank you. Mr. DuPont, any questions?
Your market rents on page 7. They vary quite a bit. The first 3 are in their 20s, and the next one on Main Street is $10, and then 11.
Yep, they do.
William, is that a grocery store?
397 William. We do have it as a grocery store, I believe. Yep.
And the first 3, they're part of a strip mall. They're not grocery store
They're
at all,
not
right?
grocery stores, no. So that would be within the same market region. I know that it's a little difficult to compare the two, but that's what we have in our system for similar property types. So
I'm just putting the address on McPhillips on Google Map, where the property is, or
yeah, I believe it's also in. You know what? I'm actually kind of forgetting. Maybe you can jog my memory on that one. I believe it's in a commercial rental unit, like a CRU, so it could be part of a strip mall, but my memory might be a little faulty on that one.
yeah, it's in front of Northgate Shopping Center.
Okay, yeah.
And it sort of appears to be part of a, looks like, oh, Google comes out that there's Cal Tire. Does that make sense?
I have a different tenant on mine, but perhaps it could have changed since we had this entered into our system, like when it was basing the information that it was pulling from. But it is a similar, let's say, a similar business type, I guess. Actually, wait, it's not a Cal Tire. That would be a different use entirely from what I have it here. I have it as a retail store, like a mail store.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Google shows it.
I will say as well that, nevertheless, that $17.50 per square foot lease rate, it's much more than what we're speaking about at the moment. So it's more of a market indicator, I would say myself.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I have it now. So it's a strip mall in front of the shopping center. On McPhillips there. So these would be different areas and different types of properties. You would agree?
Yeah, some of them would be different. Yep.
So a better comparable would be grocery stores.
I do have several here. That's 839 Cavalier. That would be one. We have that at $12 per square foot. 960 397 William Avenue. That's another store that's using a similar fashion. And then I would say as well, yeah, I mean, for my comparables, that's probably where you would want to rest your hat on. Those are the two that are used in a very similar fashion to what we're speaking of. They both have higher square footages. One's a little on the older end, and then one's a little on the newer end. But inversely, the lower-ended comparable is receiving a higher rental rate than the more recent or the more newer building comparable that we have there.
So
definitely between $9.6 and $12, and it looks like our model has it at $10.81. That seems to be whereabouts where it's predicting it should be.
So your small comparables, 1,000, 2,000 square feet versus subject that's 9,000 square feet, you would agree it's not comparable?
I would agree that it's not comparable in size. It's more market indicators than anything else, but yeah, for size, they wouldn't be the best indicators. Definitely 397 William Avenue and 839 Cavalier Drive. Those would be the better ones for size and use.
And 839 Cavalier, I see Google Map is part of a strip mall there also. So would you agree that's superior?
Perhaps in its location, if it is. Yeah, I have it listed here as a grocery store, but and thinking in the bigger picture, you might be right on where that is on Cavalier Drive. So that could be the case. But again, $12 as opposed to 1081 that we're talking about right now.
And that one it shows us being a food fair. So would you agree that's a better brand?
I can agree to that. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with to be able to compare that.
The cap rate comes out much slower than what it was last time. It was 8.4 before. Now you're at 7.55. Do you know why it went down?
I'm not aware. No. It's just what the model generated for this cycle. That would be the cap rate is 7.55%.
It's all questions I have.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Do you have any questions?
I don't have any further questions.
Stephen, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
And I think the questions that I had, Mr. DuPont already asked them and answered, so thank you. So, Mr. DuPont, you can go ahead.
Okay, so from my report, so I'm asking for 829, and photos and maps are very similar to the assessor. I don't think we have to get too much into that. The market rents I have on page 15. And I tried to look for grocery stores. So mine are grocery stores. Some of the square footages are larger. And then the average is 975 and medium 954. We use 950 based on that. Cap rate, we say the city applied some 5.5 and their 2020 cap rate was 8.4. And the board of revision applied 8.5 last time. So we applied 8.5%, so we don't believe anything has changed. So the next page is the income approach. I have to rotate my view. So at the bottom, there's a table in red. It shows the assessors at 1081 per square foot and some 5.5 cap rate. And we have that highlighted in blue, and that's what we dispute. And 2020, they had 977 rent, 840, 8.4 cap rate. And the board reduced it to $9 rent and slightly higher cap rate, 8.5. So this time around, we go 50 cents more on rent, 950. We use the same cap rate as last time. We agree with the assessor's parameters for the rest, except we allow for the management or non-recovery expense 5%. So that comes to a value of 829,000, which is similar to the board's 2020 decision of 821,000. That's my report. Yeah, I have photos inside also afterwards, but that's it. That's my report.
Thank you. Mr. Bertinelli, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Christina, do you have any questions?
Yeah, again, I got a clarification on, you mentioned the previous value was, what did you, on the property was similar to what you're asking now? Is that what I heard you say?
What's the last two lines in my page 16?
16.
It was
okay.
917, and the board reduced it to 821,000.
Okay, so you've only, and you're asking 821, so you feel that the value of the property has not increased?
I'm asking for 829.
829, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Shortfall increase from 650 to 7.
Did you appeal that previous ruling?
No. The main difference is the last line on page 16. It appears that the board did not accept our non-recoverable expenses, which I have now is 5% at $39.93. So if you take that $39.93 off, that would account for the difference.
Okay, so, but in essence, you are asking generally for a similar value as what the board applied in the previous cycle. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you don't use the non-rec expenses, my value would go up to 876,000 compared to the board's
876. Okay.
876 compared to the board's 2020 ruling of 821,000.
Okay. All right. That explains that a bit. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
So, any questions?
I have no further questions.
And I don't either. So thank you. So I think this completes all matters that are on the agenda today. we will deliberate and render our decisions. And it will be sent out, so we're going to close this meeting right